The rain fell softly against the streets of Woodburn, Oregon on the evening of March 14, 2003, creating halos around the streetlights that lined the main thoroughfare through town. It was the kind of gentle spring rain that farmers welcomed, the kind that promised an early bloom for the valley's famous tulip fields. Inside the Dairy Mart convenience store on Highway 214, 34-year-old Jennifer Haley Garcia wiped down the counter for the third time that hour, glancing at the clock above the coffee station. 10:47 p.m., just 13 minutes until her shift ended. She tucked a strand of dark brown hair behind her ear and smiled at the elderly man purchasing a lottery ticket, a wedding ring catching the fluorescent light as she handed him his change. Outside, the rain continued its quiet percussion on the roof, and the neon open sign cast a red glow across the wet pavement. Jennifer had no way of knowing that in less than an hour, she would vanish completely, leaving behind 3 children, a bewildered husband, and a mystery that would haunt Woodburn for 2 decades. Jennifer Maria Haley was born on August 3, 1968 in Salem, Oregon, the youngest of 4 children in a close-knit Catholic family. Her childhood was spent in the working-class neighborhoods of East Salem, where her father worked as a mechanic and her mother as a school cafeteria worker. Friends from Jefferson Middle School remembered Jennifer as perpetually cheerful, always organizing bake sales and volunteering to tutor younger students in math. She graduated from South Salem High School in 1986, where she'd been a member of the Future Business Leaders of America Club and had dreams of opening her own bakery someday. Those dreams shifted when she met Roberto Garcia at a 4th of July barbecue in 1988. Roberto, a soft-spoken dairy farm worker originally from Michoacan, Mexico, swept Jennifer off her feet with his gentle manner and dedication to family. They married on September 15, 1990, in a small ceremony at St. Luke Catholic Church in Woodburn. By 2003, Jennifer and Roberto had built a modest but happy life. They lived in a small, well-maintained rental house on 2nd Street, a pale yellow 2-bedroom with a carefully tended garden where Jennifer grew tomatoes and marigolds. Their 3 children, Michael, age 11, Sophia, age 8, and little Daniel, just 4, were the center of Jennifer's universe. She coached Sophia's AYSO soccer team on weekends, never missed Michael's clarinet recitals at McLaren Youth Correctional Facility, where he performed with a community outreach program, and could be seen every afternoon at Valor Middle School pickup line, Daniel strapped into his car seat in their 1998 Toyota Corolla, waiting for his older siblings. Jennifer worked the evening shift at Dairy Mart 3 nights a week to help make ends meet, always careful to be home in time to pack lunches and see the kids off to school the next morning. She kept a worn recipe box on the kitchen counter, filled with index cards in her neat handwriting. Her grandmother's tamale recipe, Roberto's favorite carne asada, the chocolate chip cookies she baked for every school fundraiser. Co-workers at Dairy Mart described her as unfailingly reliable, always arriving 15 minutes early for her shifts, always volunteering to cover for others when emergencies arose. She had a habit of keeping a small notebook in her apron pocket, where she jotted down birthday reminders for regular customers and ideas for her children's upcoming school projects. At 10:58 p.m. on March 14, 2003, Jennifer rang up her last customer of the evening, a transaction for $8.47, a pack of Marlboro Lights and a Pepsi. The customer, later identified as Dale Thornton, a long-haul trucker passing through on Interstate 5, remembered nothing unusual about the interaction. Security footage from that final hour showed Jennifer moving efficiently through her closing duties, restocking cigarette displays, wiping down the coffee station, counting the drawer. At 11:02 p.m., she clocked out using the time card system, her neat signature marking the end of her shift. She pulled on her dark blue jacket, a hand-me-down from her sister, with a small tear in the left pocket that she'd been meaning to mend, and waved to Terry Campos, the overnight clerk arriving to relieve her. "See you Sunday," she called out, her voice clear on the security recording. She pushed through the glass door into the rain-soaked night, her white Nikes splashing through shallow puddles as she walked toward the employee parking area behind the building. At 11:04 p.m., her headlights swept across the rear lot as she backed out her Corolla. But when Roberto woke at 6:15 a.m. to prepare for his 7 a.m. shift at the dairy, Jennifer wasn't in bed beside him. Her side of the sheets was still made, the handmade quilt his mother had given them for their 10th anniversary undisturbed. Her toothbrush sat dry in the holder. The coffee maker, which she always programmed the night before, sat dark and silent. Roberto's chest tightened with the first flutter of unease. He walked through their small house, checking each room. The children were still asleep. Jennifer's purse wasn't on its usual hook by the door. Perhaps she'd gone to the store for milk, he reasoned, though that made no sense at this hour. He called her cell phone, a basic Nokia flip phone she'd gotten the previous Christmas. It rang 5 times before going to voicemail. Her cheerful recorded greeting. "Hi, you've reached Jennifer. Leave me a message and I'll call you right back," sent a chill down his spine. He called Dari Mart. Terry Campos answered, groggy after his shift. "Yeah, Jennifer left right at 11, like always. Saw her get in her car." Roberto called Jennifer's sister, Maria, who lived in Salem. She hadn't heard from Jennifer since their phone conversation that afternoon about Sophia's upcoming birthday party. By 7:30 a.m., Roberto was standing in the lobby of the Woodburn Police Department on Front Street, his hands shaking as he tried to explain to Officer Kevin Matsuda that his wife had disappeared. Within 2 hours, Woodburn Police launched a missing persons investigation. Sergeant Rick Westering, a 20-year veteran of the department with a reputation for thoroughness, took lead on the case. He immediately dispatched officers to Dari Mart to review security footage and interview staff. The tapes showed exactly what Terry Campos had described. Jennifer leaving at 11:04 p.m., walking to her car alone, no one following her, no one waiting in the shadows. Her vehicle, a silver 1998 Toyota Corolla with Oregon plates reading JMG 483, was entered into state and national databases as missing. A BOLO, be on the lookout, went out to every law enforcement agency in the Pacific Northwest. By noon, volunteers from St. Luke's Parish had organized at the church, creating a makeshift command center in the fellowship hall. Roberto sat in a folding chair, looking dazed, while Jennifer's mother, Patricia Haley, handed out flyers to the growing crowd. The flyer featured Jennifer's most recent photo, taken at Michael's winter concert just 2 months earlier, her smile bright, her eyes sparkling with maternal pride. Missing, Jennifer Haley Garcia. Last seen, March 14, 2003, 11 p.m. The description noted her height, 5 foot 3 inches, her weight of approximately 130 pounds, her dark brown shoulder-length hair, brown eyes, and the small scar above her right eyebrow from a childhood bicycle accident. Marion County Sheriff's Office joined the search on day 2, bringing K-9 units and aerial support. Search teams combed the route between Dari Mart and Jennifer's home, a distance of just 1.7 miles that should have taken no more than 5 minutes to drive. Bloodhounds picked up Jennifer's scent in the employee parking lot, but lost it at the edge of the pavement, suggesting she'd gotten into a vehicle, presumably her own Corolla. Helicopter searches covered a 20-mile radius from Woodburn, pilots scanning fields, forested areas, and waterways for any sign of the silver sedan or Jennifer herself. Divers searched the Pudding River and Silver Creek. Marion County Search and Rescue volunteers walked grid patterns through agricultural lands and wooded parcels. Detective Sarah Chen from the Marion County Major Crimes Unit interviewed everyone who'd had contact with Jennifer in the days leading up to her disappearance. Co-workers described her as upbeat, excited about Sophia's upcoming 9th birthday party, planned for March 22nd. She'd been saving money for a special cake from Alfonso's Bakery and had bought party supplies the previous weekend: streamers, balloons, and a piñata shaped like a unicorn that still sat in the hall closet, waiting for a celebration that would never happen. Friends reported no marital problems, no financial troubles beyond the typical struggles of a working-class family, no signs of depression or plans to leave. Jennifer's bank account showed no unusual activity. Her last transaction was a $40 withdrawal from an ATM on March 13th. Her credit cards remained unused after her disappearance. The media descended on Woodburn by day 3. Portland news stations sent camera crews to cover the story of the missing mother of 3. The Statesman Journal ran Jennifer's photo on the front page. Roberto appeared at a press conference on March the 18th, his voice breaking as he read a prepared statement in halting English, begging anyone with information to come forward. "Please," he said, tears streaming down his face. "My children. They ask every day, 'When is Mama coming home?' I don't have answer for them. If someone has Jennifer, please let her come home." The scene was heartbreaking. 11-year-old Michael standing beside his father, trying to be brave. Little Daniel in Patricia's arms, asking loudly, "Where's Mommy?" while Sophia sobbed into her Aunt Maria's shoulder. Tips began flooding in. A woman in Salem reported seeing someone matching Jennifer's description at a Fred Meyer. It wasn't her. A man in Eugene claimed he'd seen the Corolla at a gas station. The vehicle had different plates. A psychic from California called with visions of water and trees, descriptions so vague they could apply to half of Oregon. Each lead was dutifully investigated. Each led nowhere. On March 20th, a breakthrough seemed to emerge when a fisherman reported a submerged vehicle in the Willamette River near Butteville. Dive teams spent 8 hours in the cold water, recovering a 1996 Toyota Camry that had been reported stolen 3 months earlier. Not Jennifer's car. Not Jennifer. Detective Chen's investigation revealed troubling circumstances that complicated the search. The section of Highway 214 between Darimart and the Haley Garcia home was poorly lit, with minimal traffic after 11 p.m. There were no traffic cameras, no businesses with exterior security cameras pointing toward the road. The stretch included several access points to rural properties and logging roads that branched off into thousands of acres of mixed forest and agricultural land. If someone had forced Jennifer off the road, or if she'd been followed and forced to drive elsewhere, there were countless places she could have been taken. Chen interviewed registered sex offenders in the area. There were 12 within a 10-mile radius. Each had alibis for the night of March 14th. She looked into recent parolees from the Oregon Department of Corrections who'd moved to the Woodburn area. Nothing generated strong leads. The investigation explored every angle. Could Jennifer have run away, started a new life? Her passport was at home, untouched. She had no secret bank accounts, no history of mental illness, no indication she was anything other than a devoted mother who couldn't wait to see her children's faces the next morning. Could Roberto have been involved? He submitted to multiple polygraph examinations, each time showing no deception. His alibi was ironclad. He'd been home with the children, something neighbors confirmed, having seen lights on in the house throughout the evening. Could it have been a random abduction? This seemed most likely. But random abductions were notoriously difficult to solve without witnesses or physical evidence. Days turned to weeks, weeks to months, months to years. The initial frenzy of search efforts and media coverage gradually faded, replaced by the grinding reality of a cold case. Jennifer's Corolla was never found. No body was discovered. No ransom demand ever came. No credible sightings materialized. The Haley Garcia family was left in the cruelest kind of limbo, unable to grieve properly because they had no body, unable to hope fully because they had no evidence Jennifer was alive. Roberto continued working at the dairy, coming home each evening to a house that felt emptier with each passing day. He couldn't bring himself to box up Jennifer's belongings. Her clothes still hung in the closet. Her toiletries remained on the bathroom counter. The recipe box stayed in its place, though no one could bring themselves to cook her recipes. Michael, Sophia, and Daniel grew up with a ghost haunting their childhood, a mother they loved, but whose absence became a defining feature of their identities. The family marked every anniversary of Jennifer's disappearance with a vigil at St. Luke's, candles flickering in the darkness, prayers whispered in Spanish and English. Patricia Haley became an advocate for missing persons, joining the board of the National Center for Missing Adults, speaking at conferences about the unique trauma of ambiguous loss. By 2010, Jennifer's case had been officially classified as cold. The file sat in a banker's box in the Marion County Sheriff's Office evidence room, periodically reviewed by detectives during mandatory cold case audits, but generating no new leads. Sergeant Westering retired in 2012, telling the Statesman Journal in an exit interview that Jennifer's disappearance haunted him more than any other case in his career. "I think about her every time I see a silver Toyota," he said. "Somewhere, someone knows what happened to Jennifer Haley Garcia. I just pray they find their conscience before I die." Detective Chen continued working the case part-time, following up on occasional tips, but the trail had gone so cold it was Arctic. The family offered a reward that grew to $25,000 thanks to donations from the community. But it generated nothing substantive. True crime message boards and websites occasionally featured Jennifer's case. Amateur sleuths proposing theories ranging from plausible to outlandish, but none advanced the investigation. Michael graduated from high school in 2010, went to community college, became a mechanic like his grandfather. Sophia graduated in 2013, studied nursing, got married. Daniel, who'd been so young when his mother disappeared, grew up with memories built more from photographs and stories than actual recollection. For 18 years, the answer to what happened to Jennifer Haley Garcia remained locked away, hidden in the darkness that had swallowed her on that rainy March night. The truth waited, patient and terrible, for the right combination of circumstances to bring it into the light. Then, on October 7, 2021, a Thursday morning with unseasonably warm weather, a group of teenagers cutting through a wooded area off Crosby Road in rural Marion County made a discovery that would crack the case wide open. Tyler Morrison, age 17, and his friends were taking a shortcut through what locals called the Crosby property, 40 acres of mixed forest and abandoned homestead that had been in litigation for years following the owner's death. They were heading towards Silver Creek for some fishing when Tyler's foot caught on something metallic protruding from the undergrowth. He stumbled, caught himself against a Douglas fir, and looked down at what had tripped him. "Hey guys," he called to his friends, his voice uncertain. "Come look at this." What Tyler had discovered was a severely corroded license plate, barely visible beneath 2 decades of leaf litter, moss, and forest debris. The teens cleared away some of the growth, revealing more. A bumper, then a fender, then the unmistakable shape of a vehicle that had been hidden by nature's patient work. The silver paint was barely visible beneath rust and organic matter, but as they cleared more debris, 3 letters on what remained of the plate became visible: JMG. Tyler pulled out his cell phone and dialed 911 at 10:23 a.m. Marion County Sheriff's Deputy Marcus Johnson arrived on scene at 10:47 a.m., followed quickly by Detective Brenda Walsh from the Major Crimes Unit. Walsh, a 16-year veteran who joined the department in 2007 and had read Jennifer's cold case file multiple times, felt her pulse quicken as she looked at the partially uncovered vehicle. She called for crime scene investigation units, for a tow truck capable of extracting the vehicle from the forest, and for someone to pull the full case file on Jennifer Haley Garcia. The vehicle sat approximately 200 yards from Crosby Road, down an overgrown dirt track that had once provided access to the old homestead. Heavy vegetation had concealed the turnoff from the main road. Blackberry brambles, young alders, and thick undergrowth made the old access road nearly invisible, unless you knew it was there. The Corolla appeared to have been driven to this spot, parked, and then simply left as the forest slowly reclaimed it. CSI technicians meticulously documented everything before the vehicle was moved, photographing from every angle, collecting botanical samples to help establish timeline, searching the surrounding area for any additional evidence. The extraction took 3 hours. The tow truck operator carefully winched the Corolla out of its forest grave, the vehicle creaking and groaning, panels separating from the frame in places where rust had completely consumed the metal. Once secured on the flatbed, it was transported to the Marion County Sheriff's Office Secure Evidence Garage. Detective Walsh assembled a team to process the vehicle, including forensic specialists from the Oregon State Police Crime Lab. The first priority was checking the vehicle identification number against Jennifer's missing vehicle. It matched. This was absolutely JMG 483, Jennifer Haley Garcia's 1998 Toyota Corolla. The passenger compartment revealed a time capsule from March 2003. In the cup holder sat a deteriorated Dairy Mart coffee cup, the logo still faintly visible. On the passenger seat lay Jennifer's purse, a black pleather shoulder bag, its contents ravaged by moisture and time but still partially identifiable. Her wallet contained her driver's license, the photo showing the same smiling face from the missing person flyers, along with credit cards, $43 in deteriorated bills, photos of her children carefully protected in plastic sleeves. Her Nokia cell phone sat in the purse's side pocket, its battery long dead, its case warped and corroded. But the most significant discovery came when forensic examiners processed the driver's seat and steering wheel. Using alternate light sources and chemical reagents, they detected presumptive positive results for blood on the driver's side, headrest, and door panel. Not large quantities, small drops and smears, consistent with someone bleeding from a head wound. The amount suggested injury, but not necessarily fatal trauma. DNA samples were carefully collected and submitted for analysis. The steering wheel yielded latent fingerprints that, despite the passage of time and environmental degradation, were partially recoverable. In the trunk, investigators found a tire iron wrapped in what appeared to be a deteriorating flannel shirt. The iron showed signs of possible biological material. Everything was meticulously documented, photographed, collected, and submitted for forensic analysis. The Oregon State Police Crime Lab assigned priority status to the case. DNA extraction from degraded samples would take weeks. The forensic team warned Detective Walsh that after 18 years of exposure to moisture, temperature fluctuations, and biological degradation, they might not get usable profiles. But they would try. Detective Walsh began reconstructing what had likely happened. The location of the vehicle suggested Jennifer had either driven there under duress or had been forced into driving there by someone already in the vehicle with her. The old access road would have been more visible in 2003, before vegetation had obscured it. Someone familiar with rural Marion County, someone who knew about abandoned properties and hidden turnoffs, could have known about this location. Walsh pulled historical tax records and found that the Crosby property had belonged to Earl Crosby, who died in 1998. The property had gone through probate, been tied up in family disputes, and had essentially been abandoned. No one maintaining it, no one visiting it, the perfect place to hide something you didn't want found. She ordered a thorough search of the surrounding area. Cadaver dogs were brought in and conducted systematic searches within a 1-mile radius of where the Corolla was found. On October 12th, 5 days after the vehicle's discovery, the dogs alerted in a dense grove of trees approximately 300 yards from where the car had been located. Search teams carefully excavated the site. What they found confirmed everyone's worst fears. Buried in a shallow grave beneath 18 inches of forest soil and covered with rocks and fallen branches, lay skeletal remains wrapped in deteriorated plastic sheeting. The bones were carefully exposed, documented, and removed by forensic anthropologists from Oregon State University. Dr. Catherine Ross, who led the recovery, noted the remains were consistent with a small-statured adult female. A preliminary examination at the scene revealed apparent trauma to the skull, a depressed fracture to the left parietal bone consistent with a blow from a heavy object. Fragments of fabric found with the remains matched descriptions of the dark blue jacket Jennifer had been wearing when she disappeared. Dental records would provide definitive identification, but Detective Walsh already knew in her heart whose remains had been found. On October 14th, those dental records confirmed it. The remains were those of Jennifer Maria Haley Garcia, missing since March 14, 2003. After 18 years and 7 months, Jennifer had been found. But instead of bringing closure, the discovery transformed the case from a missing person investigation into a homicide investigation. Someone had murdered Jennifer, hidden her car, and buried her in those woods. And after nearly 2 decades, Detective Walsh was determined to find out who. The news hit the family with devastating finality. Roberto Garcia, now 59 years old, sat in Detective Walsh's office, tears streaming down his weathered face as she gently delivered the confirmation everyone had feared but hoped would never come. "At least we can bring her home now," he whispered in Spanish. "At least we can bury her properly." The media coverage was intense. National news outlets picked up the story, the cold case that had finally broken open after almost 2 decades. The community of Woodburn, many of whom still remembered Jennifer and had participated in those original searches, gathered once again at St. Luke's for a memorial vigil. This time, though, the candles were for mourning rather than hoping. Patricia Haley, now 78, and in declining health, clutched a photograph of her daughter and wept. Michael, Sophia, and Daniel, now 30, 28, and 22, stood together, a united front forged in shared loss, finally able to grieve the mother they'd never stopped missing. Detective Walsh's investigation shifted into high gear. The DNA results from the blood in the Corolla came back first. The profile matched Jennifer's DNA, established from samples taken from personal items in her home. Her hairbrush, her toothbrush. But there was something else. A second DNA profile, a partial male profile, had been recovered from the driver's side door handle and steering wheel. The profile was entered into CODIS, the combined DNA index system maintained by the FBI. On November 3, 2021, Detective Walsh received the call she'd been waiting for. CODIS had found a match. The DNA belonged to Kenneth Ray Dutton, age 48, currently residing in Gresham, Oregon. Dutton had a criminal history, minor drug charges in the 1990s, a DUI in 2005, charges of theft in 2010. His DNA had been entered into CODIS following a 2012 conviction for felony theft. Walsh immediately pulled everything she could find on Kenneth Dutton. Kenneth Ray Dutton was born on June 12, 1973, in Portland, Oregon. His early life was marked by instability, father absent, mother struggling with substance abuse, in and out of foster care. He dropped out of Madison High School in his junior year, worked a series of manual labor jobs, developed problems with methamphetamine in his 20s. Court records showed a pattern of theft and drug-related offenses, but nothing violent. Nothing that would have flagged him as a potential killer. Detective Walsh dug deeper into Dutton's history. In March 2003, where had he been living? She pulled old address records and felt a chill run down her spine. In 2003, Kenneth Dutton had been living in a trailer on Wyatt Lane in Woodburn, Oregon, less than 3 miles from the Dairy Mart where Jennifer worked. His employment records from 2003 showed he'd been working for Green Acres Landscaping, a local company that serviced commercial and residential properties throughout Marion County. Walsh cross-referenced the company's client list with the Crosby property. Green Acres had maintained the Crosby property's driveway and kept the access road clear until Earl Crosby's death in 1998. The company had continued limited maintenance into 1999, while the estate was in probate. Kenneth Dutton would have known about that property. He would have known about the overgrown access road. He would have known it was abandoned, forgotten, perfect for hiding something. Walsh obtained search warrants for Dutton's current residence, his vehicle, and his financial records. She assembled a team to execute the warrants simultaneously to prevent him from destroying evidence. But there was a problem. Kenneth Dutton had seemingly vanished. His last known address in Gresham showed he'd moved out 3 months earlier. His last employer, a landscaping company in Clackamas County, said he'd stopped showing up for work in late July and they'd terminated his employment. His cell phone was disconnected. His vehicle, a 2004 Ford F-150, was registered to the address in Gresham but was nowhere to be found. Walsh put out a bolo for Dutton and his truck. U.S. Marshals were notified in case he'd fled across state lines. Detective Walsh suspected that the media coverage of Jennifer's remains being found had spooked him. If he was guilty, he knew they'd eventually connect him to the scene. He was running. The forensic analysis of the tire iron found in the Corolla's trunk provided the break Walsh needed. DNA extracted from biological material on the iron matched Jennifer's profile. The weapon used to kill her had been in the car. But more importantly, a partial fingerprint lifted from the iron's handle matched prints on file for Kenneth Ray Dutton. Walsh now had DNA evidence placing Dutton in Jennifer's vehicle and fingerprint evidence connecting him to the probable murder weapon. The case was building, but she needed Dutton in custody. The search expanded. Walsh interviewed Dutton's known associates, family members, former employers. A picture emerged of a man who'd never quite gotten his life together, who'd struggled with addiction, who'd been known to become aggressive when using methamphetamine. Former co-workers from 2003 remembered him as unreliable, someone who'd show up to jobs high, who'd been fired at least twice that they knew of. One former co-worker, James Pritchard, provided a crucial piece of information. Kenny used to hang around that dairy mart on 214, Pritchard said. He'd buy beer there after work. I remember because he'd always complain about the price. Said the evening clerk, I think it was a woman, was always giving him looks, like he was going to steal something. Walsh pulled security footage from her investigation in 2003, footage that had been preserved in evidence. She reviewed hours of tape from the weeks leading up to Jennifer's disappearance. And there he was. Kenneth Dutton appeared on Dairy Mart's security cameras on at least 7 occasions between February and March 2003. He'd been a regular customer. He would have known Jennifer's schedule, would have known when she worked, would have known when she left. Walsh interviewed Terry Campos again, now retired from Dairy Mart and living in Salem. Do you remember a customer named Kenneth Dutton? She asked, showing him a 2003 mugshot photo from Dutton's drug arrest. Terry squinted at the photo. Maybe. We had a lot of regulars. But I remember there was this guy, came in a lot, always seemed kind of tweaked, you know. Made Jennifer uncomfortable. She mentioned it once, said he'd tried to ask her out, and she'd turned him down. Said he got kind of aggressive about it, asked her why she wouldn't give him a chance. She told him she was married, showed him her ring. He said something like, that doesn't have to mean anything. The investigation was coalescing. Walsh theorized that Kenneth Dutton had become fixated on Jennifer, had possibly been high on methamphetamine that night in March 2003, and had either been waiting for her when she left work or had followed her from the store. Perhaps he'd flagged her down on the road, pretended to need help, got into her car. Perhaps he'd forced his way in. The blood evidence suggested a struggle. The head wound indicated he'd struck her with the tire iron, possibly in the car. Possibly after forcing her to drive to the Crosby property. He'd then killed her, buried her body, and hidden her car, thinking the dense forest would keep his secrets forever. But after 18 years, those secrets were coming to light. All Walsh needed was to find Kenneth Dutton and confront him with the evidence. On December 2nd, 2021, a tip came in from a motel manager in Bend, Oregon. A man matching Dutton's description had been staying at the Desert Star Motel for the past 3 weeks, paying cash, using a false name. The Bend Police Department, working with Deschutes County Sheriff's Office and coordinating with Detective Walsh, set up surveillance on the motel. At 6:47 a.m. on December 3rd, Kenneth Ray Dutton walked out of room 1017, heading toward his Ford truck. Officers moved in. Kenneth Dutton, Deschutes County Sheriff's Office, you're under arrest. Dutton froze, his hand on the truck's door handle. For a moment, it looked like he might run, but he was surrounded by 6 officers with weapons drawn. He raised his hand slowly, his face going pale. For what? He asked, his voice shaking. For the murder of Jennifer Haley Garcia. Officers saw the recognition flash across his face, followed immediately by what they would later describe as resignation. He knew why they were there. He'd probably been expecting them since the news reports of Jennifer's remains being discovered. Dutton was transported to the Deschutes County Jail, where Detective Walsh and her partner, Detective Thomas Rivera, met him for questioning. After being read his Miranda rights, Dutton initially invoked his right to an attorney. But 3 hours later, he asked to speak to detectives again. When Walsh and Rivera entered the interrogation room at the Deschutes County Sheriff's Office, Dutton looked like he'd aged 10 years in those 3 hours. I want to tell you what happened, he said quietly. I've been carrying this for 18 years. I'm tired of running from it. Walsh carefully reminded him of his rights, made sure he understood he could stop talking at any time. Dutton waived those rights and began to talk. His confession was detailed, damning, and horrifying in its mundane selfishness. I'd been going to that dairy mart for months, he began. I liked the evening clerk, Jennifer. She was pretty, always nice to everyone. I thought maybe she liked me too, you know? I asked her out a couple times. She always said no, said she was married. But I thought, maybe if I caught her at the right time, she'd change her mind. His voice was flat, emotionless, as if he were describing something that had happened to someone else. That night, March 14th, I'd been using meth, and I was feeling bold, feeling like this was the night I was going to convince her. I waited in my truck in the parking lot behind the store. When she came out, I got out and went up to her car. She was getting in. I knocked on her window, asked if we could talk. She looked scared, which I guess I should have realized was a sign, but I was high and stupid. She cracked the window and told me to leave her alone, or she'd call the cops. That made me mad. Really mad. Dutton's hands trembled as he continued. I pulled the door open before she could lock it. She tried to fight me off, but I got in the car. She was screaming, hitting me. I grabbed a tire iron from my truck first. I'd been planning to... I don't know what I was planning. I just wanted to scare her. I got in her car with it, told her to shut up and drive. She was crying, begging me to let her go, saying she had kids at home. That just made me angrier. I told her to drive toward the old Crosby place. I'd worked on that property years before, knew it was abandoned. She drove, crying the whole way. When we got there, she tried to run. I hit her. I didn't mean to kill her. I swear I didn't. I just wanted her to stop screaming, stop crying. But I hit her with a tire iron and she went down. There was blood. I panicked. His voice broke. I checked for a pulse. She was dead. I'd killed her. I didn't know what to do. I was high and freaking out. I wrapped her in some plastic I had in my truck bed, carried her into the woods, dug a grave. It took me hours. Then I drove her car deeper into the property, wiped it down the best I could, covered it with branches. I walked back to my truck and drove home. And I've been living with what I did every day since. Detective Walsh maintained her professional composure, though inside she felt sick. "Why didn't you come forward?" she asked. Dutton laughed bitterly. "And say what? I murdered someone while high on meth? I was scared. I thought if I just kept my head down, it would go away. When they searched and didn't find anything, I thought I'd gotten away with it. But I couldn't get her face out of my head. Her kids. I knew she had kids. I destroyed that family. I've been waiting for this day in a way. I'm almost relieved it's over." Walsh asked if he'd had any accomplices. No. He'd acted alone. She asked about his whereabouts over the past 18 years. He'd drifted, worked various jobs, struggled with addiction, been in and out of jail for petty crimes. He'd never hurt anyone else. Jennifer had been an impulsive act driven by drugs, rejection, and rage. Not that this excused anything. His confession was videotaped, witnessed, and signed. Kenneth Ray Dutton was extradited back to Marion County and booked into the Marion County Jail on December 7, 2021. He was charged with 1 count of murder in the first degree, 1 count of kidnapping in the first degree, and 1 count of abuse of a corpse. The Marion County District Attorney's Office, led by Deputy District Attorney Lauren Mitchell, assembled a case that combined Dutton's confession with the overwhelming physical evidence, DNA, fingerprints, the tire iron, the burial site, everything meticulously documented and preserved. Dutton's public defender, Michael Sullivan, faced an almost impossible task. His client had confessed in detail, and the physical evidence corroborated every element of that confession. Sullivan advised Dutton that his best option was a plea agreement to avoid the death penalty. Oregon had suspended executions, but the death penalty was technically still on the books, and the DA's office had initially indicated they might seek it, given the aggravated nature of the crime, kidnapping resulting in murder. On February 22, 2022, Kenneth Ray Dutton appeared in Marion County Circuit Court before Judge Christina Stevenson. In exchange for pleading guilty to all charges, the prosecution agreed not to seek the death penalty. Dutton entered his guilty pleas in a voice barely above a whisper. Judge Stevenson scheduled sentencing for April 15, 2022. The courtroom was packed that day. Roberto Garcia sat in the front row, flanked by his children. Michael, now 31, Sophia, 29, and Daniel, 23. Jennifer's mother, Patricia, too frail to attend in person, participated via video link from her care facility. The prosecution presented victim impact statements. Michael spoke first, his voice steady but filled with pain. "My mother was my best friend. She taught me how to change a tire, how to cook, how to treat people with kindness. Kenneth Dutton didn't just kill her, he stole 18 years of closure from us, 18 years of not knowing, of hoping against hope she'd walk through the door. He let us suffer in uncertainty while he went about his life. Sophia spoke next, tears streaming down her face. I was 8 years old when my mom disappeared. I'm 29 now. I got married last year, and the absence of my mother at my wedding was a physical ache. She'll never meet my children. She'll never see the woman I became. Kenneth Dutton took that from both of us because he couldn't handle rejection. Because he felt entitled to a woman who owed him nothing. I hope every day for the rest of his life he feels the weight of what he did. Daniel, who had been only 4 when Jennifer vanished, and whose memories of her were fragmentary, spoke last. I barely remember my mom except through photos and stories. But I've felt her absence every single day of my life. Every parent-teacher conference, every birthday, every milestone, she wasn't there. Not because she didn't love me, but because Kenneth Dutton murdered her. He stole my mother, and he stole my childhood. Roberto declined to make a statement, too overcome with emotion to speak. His written statement was read by Deputy DA Mitchell. Jennifer was the love of my life, my partner, my best friend. She was a devoted mother, a caring daughter, a beloved sister. Kenneth Dutton took her from us in the most violent, selfish way imaginable. No sentence will bring her back. No punishment will heal what he broke. But I pray that justice today brings some measure of peace to my family. Judge Stevenson heard additional testimony about Dutton's criminal history, his struggles with addiction, and his apparent lack of violent offenses before or after Jennifer's murder. Sullivan argued for leniency based on his client's drug addiction, his remorse, and his cooperation with authorities. But Judge Stevenson was unmoved. "Mr. Dutton," she said, her voice carrying the weight of moral authority, "you have pled guilty to one of the most heinous crimes I have encountered in my 20 years on the bench. You kidnapped a young mother at gunpoint, forced her to drive to a remote location, murdered her with a tire iron, and buried her in a shallow grave, where she remained hidden for 18 years. You have robbed 3 children of their mother, a husband of his wife, a family of their daughter and sister. Your addiction does not excuse your actions. Your remorse, while perhaps genuine now, comes 2 decades too late." Judge Stevenson sentenced Kenneth Ray Dutton to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the murder charge, consecutive 25-year sentences for the kidnapping charge, and a consecutive 5-year sentence for abuse of a corpse. The total sentence ensured that Kenneth Ray Dutton, now 49 years old, would die in prison. He was remanded immediately to the Oregon Department of Corrections and would be transferred to Oregon State Penitentiary in Salem to begin serving his sentence. As he was led from the courtroom in shackles, Dutton turned briefly toward the family. Whether he was looking for forgiveness or simply wanted one last look at the people whose lives he destroyed was unclear. None of the family members met his eyes. The trial and sentencing brought significant media coverage. The case became a touchstone in discussions about violence against women, about how drug addiction can fuel dangerous entitlement, about the importance of never giving up on cold cases. Detective Brenda Walsh was commended by Marion County Sheriff Joe Cast for her persistent and thorough investigative work. Detective Walsh's dedication to finding justice for Jennifer Haley Garcia exemplifies the commitment of this office to never forget victims or their families, Sheriff Cast said at a press conference. Cold cases are never truly closed. They are simply waiting for the right combination of technology, dedication, and sometimes luck to break them open. The Oregon State Police Crime Lab was also recognized for its forensic work in extracting usable DNA and fingerprints from evidence that had been exposed to the elements for nearly 2 decades. Advances in DNA extraction and analysis techniques that hadn't existed in 2003 had made the difference between an unsolved mystery and a convicted killer. The case highlighted the importance of maintaining evidence properly, even in cold cases, because you never knew when technology would catch up to possibility. For the Haley Garcia family, Dutton's conviction brought a bittersweet form of closure. On May 14, 2022, exactly 1 month after the sentencing, Jennifer Maria Haley Garcia was finally laid to rest. The funeral mass at St. Luke Catholic Church drew hundreds of mourners, former co-workers, childhood friends, members of the Woodburn community who'd never forgotten the young mother who'd vanished without a trace. Father Miguel Santos, who'd served at St. Luke's since 2001 and had presided over many of the vigils for Jennifer over the years, delivered the homily. Jennifer's light was extinguished far too soon by an act of senseless violence, he said. But her memory lives on in her children, in her family, in everyone who was touched by her kindness and her love. Today, we finally bring Jennifer home, and we pray that she has found peace in the arms of God. Jennifer was buried at Bel Passe Cemetery in Woodburn. Her gravestone reading, Jennifer Maria Haley Garcia, August 3rd, 1968, March 14th, 2003. Beloved mother, wife, daughter, sister, forever in our hearts. Patricia Haley passed away peacefully in her sleep on July 3rd, 2022, at age 79. Her family took comfort in knowing she'd lived long enough to see justice for her daughter. Roberto continues to work at the dairy, now nearing retirement age. Michael works as a mechanic in Salem and has 2 children of his own, a daughter named Jennifer and a son named Roberto. Sophia works as a pediatric nurse in Portland and has dedicated herself to child advocacy work. Daniel graduated from Portland State University with a degree in criminal justice and now works as a victims advocate with the Oregon Department of Justice. The 3 siblings remain close, bound together by shared tragedy and the determination to honor their mother's memory. They established the Jennifer Haley Garcia Memorial Scholarship Fund, which provides financial assistance to children who've lost parents to violent crime. The fund has helped more than 50 students pursue higher education. Detective Walsh continued working in major crimes and became the de facto expert on cold cases in Marion County. She's since helped solve 3 additional cold cases using similar combinations of preserved evidence and advancing forensic technology. She keeps a photograph on her desk, Jennifer's smiling face from that missing person poster, as a reminder of why the work matters. Every victim deserves justice, Walsh told the Statesman Journal in a feature article about the case. It doesn't matter if it takes months, years, or decades. We don't give up. We can't give up. There are families out there who need answers, who deserve answers. Jennifer's case reminds us that persistence pays off, that evidence carefully preserved can speak even after decades of silence. I think about Jennifer's kids who lived for 18 years not knowing what happened to their mom. Now they know. It's not the answer they wanted, but at least they can stop wondering. That matters. The case prompted changes in how Marion County handles missing person investigations. The sheriff's office implemented new protocols for evidence preservation, requiring that all physical evidence in unsolved cases be catalogued and stored with an eye toward future technological advances. They partnered with the Oregon State Police to create a cold case database that allows easier cross-referencing between old cases and new forensic techniques. The case also highlighted the importance of maintaining security footage and surveillance records for extended periods, leading to recommendations that businesses upgrade to digital systems with longer retention periods. The Woodburn community honored Jennifer's memory with a small memorial garden at the corner of Front Street and Settlemere Avenue near the police department. The garden features a stone bench engraved with Jennifer's name and the words, "In loving memory of all missing persons, never forgotten." On the anniversary of her disappearance each March 14th, the community gathers there for a brief remembrance ceremony, lighting candles and reflecting on the importance of looking out for one another. Kenneth Ray Dutton remains incarcerated at Oregon State Penitentiary. He has not granted interviews or made any public statements beyond his confession and guilty plea. Prison records indicate he participates in addiction recovery programs and has had no major disciplinary infractions. Whether he experiences genuine remorse or simply the resignation of a man who knows he'll die behind bars is impossible to say. What is clear is that he will never again walk free, will never again have the opportunity to harm another person the way he harmed Jennifer Haley Garcia. The case serves as a stark reminder that behind every missing person poster is a real human being with a family who loves them, with a story that matters, with a life that had value beyond measure. Jennifer was more than a victim. She was a mother who baked cookies for school fundraisers, a wife who kept a recipe box full of family favorites, a daughter who made her parents proud, a friend who always had time to listen. She had dreams and plans and a future that was stolen from her by a man who felt entitled to something he had no right to claim. As we close this chapter on Jennifer's story, we must remember that there are thousands of cases like hers across the country. Missing persons whose families live in agonizing uncertainty, cold cases gathering dust in evidence rooms, families who refuse to give up hope even as years turn into decades. Every one of those cases represents a Jennifer Haley Garcia, a person who mattered, whose absence leaves a hole in the world that can never be filled. The resolution of Jennifer's case offers hope that justice, while sometimes delayed, can still be achieved. Technology advances, evidence speaks. Dedicated investigators refuse to give up. And sometimes, after 18 years of silence, truth finally emerges from the darkness where it was hidden. Make sure you subscribe to stay updated on more stories like Jennifer's, cases that remind us why we must never stop fighting for justice. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. And please, share this video with someone who appreciates true crime content that honors the victims and their families rather than sensationalizing tragedy. Your support helps bring attention to cold cases across the country, keeps pressure on investigative agencies, and reminds families that their loved ones aren't forgotten. What do you think should be done to improve how law enforcement handles missing person cases in those critical first hours? How can communities better support families dealing with the ambiguous loss of a missing loved one? Comment your thoughts below. I read every comment and appreciate this community's thoughtful engagement with these difficult stories. Every unsolved case represents a family still waiting for answers, still hoping for the closure that finally came to Roberto Garcia and his children after 18 years of not knowing. If this story moved you, consider supporting organizations like the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the National Missing and Unidentified Persons System, or local victim advocacy groups in your area. Justice for Jennifer came late, but it came. Let's work to ensure that other families don't have to wait 2 decades for the truth.